What's up, y'all? I'm Rachael, realtor and resident here living in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Are you planning to buy a house in Tennessee in 2023 and worried that you missed your window to buy? Remember that every market has its challenges for both buyers and sellers. Remember that super low interest rate? It was a little bit crazy, and that wasn't always easy either. And if you're wondering whether renting first is the better option, I'll discuss pros and cons to that as well. So what challenges will home buyers be facing in 2023? Personally, I feel like the news headlines can be a little bit scary and confusing, and they tend to skew negatively. Remember that the real estate market can vary widely from location to location. Take those news headlines with a grain of salt. Has the real estate market in Tennessee come to a slowdown? No, but it has slowed down relative to that crazy fast pace that we saw in 21 and 22. How much it slowed down is really varied, again, by location. Another thing that's affected the pace of the markets are those rising interest rates in 2022, though reportedly we'll see those lower, kind of remain steady, at least by the end of 2023. Yes, interest rates are a challenge currently, but look at 8 to 12 months ago, getting an offer accepted was a challenge. Finding a house that didn't already have 20 offers on it was a challenge. That's not likely to be a challenge in 2023, though we can't rule out that there might be multiple offers in some situations. You're especially likely to see multiple offers on a move-in ready home that is at a lower or average price point for that area. Certainly, the higher the price point, the longer those tend to take to sell. So if you're kind of looking in those lower to average price point, which most of us are, just remember that in some cases it might be competitive. But I would call this moderately competitive, not crazy competitive like we saw last year. So that's my first tip, is to first look at what's happening at your local level with the real estate market and then look at the national headlines. There's a lot of YouTubers out there, they're making market update videos about a housing crash that has yet to happen in the 3 to 5 years that they've been predicting it. And it's sad because this type of content just gets a lot of views. My next bit of advice for people buying a home in Tennessee in 2023 is to have a job lined up once you get here. So if you are looking to move here and buy a home, remember you're not going to qualify for a loan without that job. And really, most landlords are also going to require that you have a job. So even just to rent an apartment, you're probably going to need this. Obviously, it's easier than ever to find a job online. You can look on Indeed. City websites also are a really great resource to find local jobs here. And there are a lot of you that you're able to work remotely. So if you can just transfer to Tennessee, that's going to be your easiest bet. At any rate, I don't want to see you getting emotionally invested in Tennessee. Go ahead and be all packed up and ready to move, but you can't qualify for housing here because you haven't found a job yet. Of course, another thing that I've seen other people do is that maybe you have a family or friend that you can stay with, get here in Tennessee, stay with them for maybe a month or so while you're looking for a job. Once you find the job, then you can get your own housing and you don't have to worry about like renting an Airbnb or where you're going to stay while you look for a job. Next up, we have standard advice, but it's always good to go ahead and be working on your finances and get that pre-approval before you start looking at housing. It doesn't make sense to look at houses without this. And if you think about it, for one, the seller is displaced during the showing. They've probably packed up the kids, the dog, whatever in the car, and they're circling the block just so that you can look at their house. Then they're going to be asking for feedback and if you're interested in submitting an offer. And what am I supposed to tell them? That you're essentially window shopping for ideas? I wouldn't want that either. Having a pre-approval beforehand, this is the standard process, and it respects the seller's time by not booking frivolous showings. Give me a like on this if you agree, and if you're in the seller's position, then I know you definitely agree. My next piece of advice for people that are moving to Tennessee in 2023 is to itemize a list of your expenditures. This applies to moving costs as well as the home buying process. Ask your lender, how much does their typical appraisal cost? You can ask your agent, how much do home inspections in your area cost? Of course, you can always call different companies and ask for their fees. In Tennessee, the typical or standard earnest deposit that I see when submitting an offer is about 1% of the purchase price. Of course, if you're in one of those multiple offer situations, which is possible in certain situations, like I said, having a little bit more money to offer for earnest money can kind of make your offer stand out just a little bit. Then there will be closing costs associated with your loan, as well as closing costs with the title company. Whomever you work with, they can tell you their fees. And of course, all transactions, when you're buying a home, you're going to have your down payment. The amount of your down payment, that's going to vary by the type of loan. You'll be working with your lender to determine how much your down payment will be. Then you'll pay for homeowners insurance, which will vary according to location, age of the home, and square footage. For example, let's take a house that's $400,000. With a 10% down payment, that would be $40,000 for your down payment. So for the earnest money, subtract $4,000 from that $40,000 down payment. You'll take $4,000 of that $40,000 down payment, then you'll give that as earnest money. That will be applied to your down payment at closing. An overestimate of inspections and appraisal in this area would be about $2,000 for both. That's just how much I would recommend to cover for both, and then you should have a little bit left over. Closing costs, title search, that'll net you less than $1,500 if you're buying here in Rutherford County. That's going to vary by county, so smaller, more rural counties, they're going to be less. Closing costs on that loan, that'll be under $11,000, and we'll estimate that the homeowner's insurance policy on this house is about $1,500 for the year. So that could be an additional $20,000 on top of your down payment that you'll need, unless any of these costs can be rolled in with your loan. So I would itemize all that according to your personal situation. Talk with your lender if any of those can be rolled in with the loan. That's could be easier, or maybe you just want to pay those up front. At least for the time while you're buying a home, a lender can kind of double as your financial advisor. Make sure you talk to them before you do any big purchases, for sure. And lastly, if you're thinking about renting first, well, let's discuss the pros and cons of that. A pro would be that you have more time to look for that perfect house, especially if this is going to be like a retirement or forever home. I tend to see people take it a little bit slower in that case, especially if you're finding that the housing market just doesn't have quite what you're looking for. Maybe you just have a very particular, very unique property need, something that's a little bit more rural, more land. Those aren't going to come on the market as often, right? That could be one scenario where in that case, rent first. That way you're not settling. A con of this would be is that possibly the place that you're renting doesn't have enough space. Maybe you have a lot of outdoor tools that you really need, like a second or exterior garage for that. A con would be that maybe you have to pack up a lot of your belongings into storage. Maybe you really need a detached garage for all of your outdoor equipment, and those are really just, you're putting them into storage because the rental house doesn't have enough room for all that stuff. So that's a definite con, is that you're just going to be kind of, I don't want to call it wasting money, but if the house is out there that is good for you and it's a good opportunity, then in that case you would be wasting money. And of course, if you're renting first, unless ending your lease lines up perfectly with finding that house, you're going to probably end up paying to break your lease some additional fees. Maybe renting first is unavoidable because you had to move so quickly. Or maybe renting is actually a better option because you're going to be living here less than 2 years. However, if your plan is to live here long term, in that case, you're not going to really save by waiting. And the reason I say that is because our pool of buyers is smaller than typical right now, even as we're entering the spring housing, the shopping season. So right now, there are good opportunities to buy. So if you're planning on living here long term and you're renting, you're really just giving all of that income that could be going into your housing equity and putting it in your landlord's pocket. And on top of that, if you continue to rent, you can bet on increases to your housing costs there as well. It's not uncommon here in Murfreesboro, for example, to see rent increases of $200 to $400 a year. At least that's what's been happening the last 2 years. Of course, the housing market's been a little bit crazy. We will see if that continues. But as of right now, rentals have been increasing like crazy around here. That's simply because the demand to move here is still very high. Landlords are capitalizing on this. Is that going to continue after 2023? Time will tell. Whether you're living in Tennessee or you're planning on moving to Tennessee, I'm sure you're going to benefit from either of the two videos on your screen right now. I appreciate you stopping by the channel, and I will see you at the next video.